Hey everyone, so welcome back. This is the 9th video in the Great American Eclipse series. I am keeping these shorter, which is what's making so many videos, but there is so much to talk about with this eclipse. I think I've still got 3 more after this one, because we still got to talk about the Devil's Comet and other things, but we're going to talk about something that not a lot of people are talking about in conjunction with this eclipse. There's 2 elements that are important that no one is talking about. One is that the eclipse is not only happening on the last day of the Hebrew calendar, it's also happening on the last day of Ramadan, which is highly unusual. That's very rare that lines up like that. Ramadan moves around quite a bit over the course of many years, which is the Muslim holiday of fasting that makes them very angry. You know, they get very passionate during this month, and a lot of they get riled up during Ramadan. But it's on the last day of Ramadan, which is just okay. Ramadan's ending that day. The Hebrew calendar, religious calendar, is ending that day. All the planets are lining up that day. The Devil's Comet's coming on the 21st. They're forming these Hebrew letters over the country. Sign of Jonah, peace, darkened completely. I mean, there's just so much. It's unbelievable. But there's more. There's something else that we haven't talked about, which is namely, there is a blood moon coming on March 25th. As I'm filming this, it's the 23rd. I will probably be able to post this tomorrow night on the 24th, so I'm hoping I'm going to get this out before it happens, because I don't know what's going to happen. I want to make sure I'm on record, but there is a blood moon happening on March 25th of 2024, and it is also falling. That blood moon is happening on Purim, Purim, the Jewish holiday that celebrates Israel, the Jewish people, being delivered from destruction at the hand of Persia, of Iran, by a villain named Hmon. If you haven't read the book of Esther, go read it. It's not that long. It's an entertaining story. You'll get done with it pretty quick, and you'll know about Esther and Hmon. And remember that Persia is Iran. Iran is Persia. What do we have in the news right now? A threat of war between Israel and Iran, between Israel and Persia. And Persia today is controlling Syria, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen that are shooting off these missiles, and now they say they have hypersonic missiles. So we have Persia rising up to attack Israel right now, just as Hmon rose up in the book of Esther to kill the Jews then from Persia. And this blood moon is happening right on Purim of this year. But there's another blood moon next year that also falls on Purim. And then there's a third blood moon in 2026 that also falls on Purim. So 3 blood moons in 3 consecutive years, all falling on Purim. That is quite the coincidence. Don't you think? So this year, and before we get into the more details of the symbolism, what is, so Purim is celebrating the Jewish delivery from persecution by Hmon and the Persians. That's what Purim is celebrating. Israel escaping death at the hands of Iran and a guy named Hmon. Now, a blood moon is a lunar eclipse. It's a lunar eclipse, and it's very different symbolism. It's different symbolism from a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse, the sun represents Jesus Christ, and then the earth is the world. We are the world. And then the moon represents God's people. God's people are normally supposed to be reflecting the light of Jesus into the world at night when Jesus is not present, just as the moon reflects the light of the sun into the world at night when the sun's not present. It's the symbolism. And there's a lot of things about the moon that connect to God's people, and even the phases have to do with how leadership in the church will get very bright. And when the leadership in the church is very bright, usually the lay people that you can't see in the back are dark. But then slowly the lay people under the leadership of the discipleship of the leaders start to turn light, start to get lighter and reflect the light of Christ better and better. But as they do, the leadership is getting dark. And then eventually the lay people are super bright and the leadership's totally dark. And then the leaders start to get bright again as new leaders come up out of the lay people, and this cycle just continues, and that's what the phases of the moon represent. Anyways, the moon represents God's people. So a solar eclipse is the moon cutting off the sun from the world. So a solar eclipse represents God's people cutting off the Messiah from the world, or blocking the world's view of the Messiah. So at the crucifixion, the Pharisees and Sadducees, the leaders of God's people, cut off Jesus, the Messiah, from the world. They killed him. Then he rose from the dead, of course. Thank goodness. This solar eclipse coming on April 8th is basically, you could look at it as God's people have failed in their job, and so we have blocked the world from seeing who Jesus really is. But a lunar eclipse, eclipse of the moon, is different. So this is when the world blocks the sun from shining on the moon. So a little different. Now the world is cutting off the life of God's people from the light, from seeing the sun. So basically, a blood moon represents persecution. That's why we would call it a blood moon. It's the world persecuting the church and cutting it off from the light of day. So, and that is what Purim is about. It was about Persia wanting to persecute and kill God's people, the Jewish people. And now you got 3 blood moons symbolizing persecution of God's people happening on 3 Purims. That's just beyond mathematical explanation, okay? It really is. Now, interestingly, it's been pointed out, and you can make of this what you will, but there are things to know about Hmon. Hmon was the bad guy. Hmon was the bad guy in Persia. Not just a bad guy, he was a real Antichrist type figure. He was a real guy, not just the character, who wanted to kill all the Jews. Like, he set up a law that would allow a total Holocaust of the Jews, like Hitler tried to do. So, really bad guy. The Bible says he is Hmon the Agagite, spelled A-G-A-G. Agagite. That means he is descended somehow from Agag, who was king of the Amalekites. And I know this is like, you're like, what? Why does this matter? Well, if you remember, God, since the time of Moses, he told Israel, you will be at war with the Amalekites generation after generation. The Amalekites are God's biggest enemy on this planet. And he repeatedly told Israel to exterminate them. And when you understand who they became, it makes perfect sense. Who was Amalek in the first place? Well, he was basically a combined descendant of Esau and Ishmael. So he is a distant cousin of Israel. But very violent. He attacked Israel as they were coming out of Egypt and trying to go into the promised land. They are representative of almost a spiritual warfare of believers trying to enter the promised land and being attacked by the enemy. And the name even Amalek speaks to people hungry after power, because the word king is kind of buried in that. Melech is buried in there. Well, I haven't been able to prove this authoritatively, but I've had a theory, and then I did find some Arabic documents in Egypt that said this is true, but I haven't been able to secure them and translate them in English to prove it. But they show that Amalek, over the years, over the centuries, became shortened to, instead of Amalekah, became Mecca. Mecca came from Amalek. And so the Meccans, Muhammad, who founded the religion of Islam, Islam came from Amalek. And now we understand why God wanted them gone, based on everything we know from recent history. So Agag was the king of the Amalekites. And the first king, Saul, first king of Israel, was King Saul. King Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. King Saul was from the tribe of Benjamin. And so the Benjaminite King Saul, the king of Israel, the Benjaminite king of Israel, let me put it that way, was told to kill Agag, the king of the Amalekites. I've been talking all day. Amalekites. He didn't do it. Samuel had to come in and do it. God condemned Saul for hesitating, for not doing it. Said he'd given direct orders to do it. This was after a war and a battle, of course. But presumably there must have been survivors from Agag's descendants. Perhaps Saul let them get away. Because then hundreds of years later, we find Hmon in Persia, who's descended from Agag, alive, who wouldn't be there if King Saul had fulfilled his role that he was ordered to do, which was to eliminate all of them. But he didn't. So here we have Hmon the Agagite in Persia, again trying to kill all the Jews. And who defeated him? Well, Mordecai, through Esther. Really, God defeated him through Mordecai and Esther. Mordecai is one of the key players. Mordecai is the one who God kind of just set it up, orchestrated it, so that in this very unexpected way, Hmon was taken off guard and ended up being killed himself. And Mordecai was raised up by the king of Persia to actually be, I think, second in command even. And the Jewish people were saved. Well, Mordecai was a Benjaminite from the tribe of Benjamin, just like King Saul. And now we fast forward to today, and the head of the nation of Iran today, Persia, is a man named Khamenei. And that name, he's a Muslim, of course, and the name sounds very close to Hmon. Khamenei. It's very close. And once again, he wants to destroy the Jewish people. And what is the name of the king of Israel now? We call him prime minister. We don't call him king. But today, the modern nation of Israel, the king's name is Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu means gift of God, gift of Yahweh. So we have once again, and as a Muslim, and not only that, Khamenei of Iran says he is a direct descendant of Muhammad, the Amalekite, the founder of Islam. And what do you think the chances are? A political leader in Persia who still has this last name Khamenei, what are the chances you think that he might actually not be descended from Hmon or Haman's line somehow? These last names persist. We have many Jews today called Levine, Levis, or Shimon, Simon, all related to the original tribes. So you have many Jews today named Cohen, which means priest in Hebrew, which means they're descended from Aaron. These surnames last over the centuries. So that part's speculative, but it's quite interesting. Anyways, so to wrap this up, we got 3 blood moons happening on 3 different Purims over 3 different years, starting this year all the way through 2026. This would seem to be a celestial sign that Iran is going to try to kill all the Jews again, that they're going to try to kill Israel, but then like Mordecai and Esther, through supernatural means, through a reorchestration, unexpected movement of the pieces, God will save Israel and destroy Persia. Save them from Persia, at least. That is what I think we should expect. Do we know anything from the dreams and visions that God has been giving people about what will happen with the war in Iran? Yes, we know some details. I will probably do a longer video on this soon, but here are the details we know. Most of this, honestly, I don't have a lot. God isn't really speaking to the average Christian across America about what's going to happen with Iran. But there are two men, You Be Ready and Chris Reed, who have both received very clear words about Iran. And they're both saying the same things. And where two or three witnesses, a matter is established. We have two separate witnesses who have posted these things separately. For example, You Be Ready, the way I found out about this is he emailed me this. He didn't even put it in a word online. And then right after that, Chris Reed put his dream online. He obviously didn't know what You Be Ready had emailed me. And then obviously You Be Ready emailed me before he posted his online. So there's no way they're copying each other. But they both said the same thing. So let me just repeat some of the details of what they have together said God has spoken to them. And that is that the war will erupt larger between Israel and Iran's proxies. And Iran's proxies would be Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Syria. The king of Syria is also allied. Damascus is allied with Iran. And then Iran itself. And we're seeing movement right now, right as this blood moon is about to hit, right as this blood moon is about to happen on Purim, Hezbollah is increasing its attacks on Israel right now. The Houthis just claimed that they received hypersonic missiles to attack ships coming through the Red Sea there. Who would have given them these hypersonic missiles? Russia. Russia's the only one who has them. It's building them in any quantity. So they say they have. So if the Houthis have them, they got them from Iran, which got them from Russia. Russia has moved its troops closer to the Golan Heights, to the Israeli border. We also have the prophecy of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel, talking about a coalition of nations led by Russia that attack Israel and are defeated supernaturally. Now, here's what was seen in some of these dreams, though. Namely, how America is involved. What both have been shown, and others have been shown this about sleeper cells, is that Iran has thousands of Iranian soldier sleeper cells active in the United States right now. And that these sleeper cells are just waiting for orders and instructions. This has actually been confirmed by the news. This isn't just from dreams. I've seen news reports talking about how Iran has sleeper cells in the country. But in Chris Reed's dream, he was shown that, and I don't think I'm going to do a clip of this one. I'll probably do a fuller video on this soon. But in Chris Reed's dream, he was shown that Iran was communicating with the American government and telling us that they had two demands. That one, that we should not get involved in the war against Iran, but we should not enter the war to help Israel against Iran. Second, that we should keep sending Iran money to help them fight Israel. And if we didn't do those two things, then they were threatening us with 3 different levels of attack. The first level is just exposure of the sexual lives of politicians. They are in their sleeper cells, and their government is in possession of compromising photos of many of our politicians. And they're saying that they will release these, and they will release other damning information about our politicians if we don't comply with their 2 demands to not get in the war and to give Iran money. By the way, this would explain why Biden and Obama both gave Iran money. The second level of escalation is mall shootings and other mass attacks on American citizens as punishment for not complying, kind of warning levels. If if you're watching, I believe we've already seen a few of these. If you're watching the news and you hear about a mass shooting, and then the shooter just disappears, and the government seems to put it under the rug, and they don't have any more news stories about it, asking who did this, who's the culprit, and you never hear who did it, that was probably one of these sleeper cells that did it. The third level is the most disturbing, and that is Iran says that its sleeper cells are in possession of suitcase nukes, and that they will detonate these in major American cities if we get involved in the war against Iran. This isn't just bluster. There's been kind of a legendary, semi-legendary talk about suitcase nuclear devices that have been in the United States for at least 40 years or more, that the KGB put here back during the Cold War. And so what is being said now, that just as the Russians may have given hypersonic missiles to Iran, who then gave them to the Houthis, it is believed that the Russians have given possession of these suitcase nuclear bombs, which are smaller than the ones that hit Nagasaki or Hiroshima. They're not quite as big as that. But they've given possession of them to the Iranian sleeper cells. And if we don't comply, that they would set them off in these cities. You can watch Chris Reed's stream. I believe it's called As Israel Goes, So Goes the Nation, or something like that. And there's also a You Be Ready dream called Suitcase Nukes. You can watch both of those and get some of this information. What else has been seen is that there will be a false flag event where Israel sinks an American naval ship in the Persian Gulf on purpose. But as they do it from a submarine, but they mask the electronic signatures of their sub to make it look like the Iranians did it. They use Iranian torpedoes, I guess, and make it sound like their sub is an Iranian sub. And so they basically sink an American Navy ship on purpose, but make it look like the Iranians did it so that America will be forced to get into the war to help them. So basically the idea is Iran, from all these sides with Russia, attacks Israel, escalates the war. We don't get involved because Iran is threatening us with these things. They're blackmailing us, extorting us, so we don't get involved, so we don't. So Israel, in its fear, decides they have to force the United States to get involved to help them, because this is an existential war for them. They're going to be annihilated if they don't get help in their minds. So they sink one of our vessels, make it look like the Iranians, so that the United States is forced to get involved. And at that point, we get involved. And then in response to that, Iran sets off the suitcase nukes. And if you want to know what cities they go off in, watch the video on YouTube called Suitcase Nukes by You Be Ready. And there's many, many others that have seen nukes go off in those exact cities. He's not the only one who's seen that. I think I've seen close to 100 videos where they've seen the exact same cities being hit by smaller nuclear weapons. So that seems like an event that will happen. Also, what's been seen is that Damascus in Syria launches chemical weapons at Israel, and many Israeli citizens die from these chemical weapons. And in response, Israel launches a nuclear weapon at Damascus and completely annihilates the city, which has never been destroyed in its history. And when they do that, that will fulfill prophecies in the Old Testament that talk about the complete destruction of Damascus by fire. So in the end, though, Israel will prevail. They will win. The forces aligned against them will have to back down and retreat. and Israel will expand its territory. It will take more land and not give it back. And coming out of this war, pretty much the entire world, including America, hate Israel and begin to hate Israel. So that is what's been seen in these dreams and visions. And I believe these blood moons are speaking to all of this. There's a lot of symbolism as usual that's all kind of tied together. God is just incredible in how he warns and speaks. Pray for the people of Israel. Pray for our own cities. Pray for the people of Iran and these other countries who are under the control of these regimes. Pray that Jesus will appear to more Muslims in dreams and save more. All of these things, is, I just look outside and I just say, this is so silly that we can't, as people, just be content with listening to the birds, reading a book, sipping a nice cup of coffee or tea, enjoying our loved ones, looking out at the trees or the mountains or the beach or whatever. We can't just enjoy life. We have to go after drugs and power and wealth and decide to murder other people to get those things. Or we let hatred consume us to make us try to annihilate another people. Why can people not just be satisfied with the beautiful things God has given us in this life? If we could all just be satisfied and not go after power and selfishness, none of these things would happen. It's really that simple. And that's why the gospel does save the world and change the world. Because it changes that in people. Anyways, this video is getting too long, so I'm going to cut it right there. This went way over what I intended. That's video 9. Stay tuned. I've actually got material for 3 more. So we'll see you soon.